Chess diagnostic.
So, Wesley So just ended his, from what I could tell, 81 game winning streak in a game he just played against Mamedyarov at the Gashimov Memorial. I think it's going on right now. So, this game was actually equal right until the very end when he made a horrendous blunder. So, let's get into it. Mamedyarov is black and Wesley So is white. So e4, e5, knight to f3, knight to c6. We could go into a Rai Lopez, but after d4 we get the Scotch game. So this variation with the knight coming to f6, trading, the pawn coming forward, and then the queen coming to e7 is called the Mises variation, and it's an opening that Garry Kasparov originally pioneered at the high levels. So this game kind of takes an unconventional turn. So after the queen moves forward, the pawn is no longer pinned, so he has to move the knight. And black's strategy, or his main strategical problem, is to figure out how to get this queen moved away from, or moved further along in the diagonal, so that this bishop can develop and he can resume normal development. Of course, with this pawn push, he's also preparing to bring this bishop on the a6 to f1 diagonal. But Mamedyarov kind of goes about it in an interesting way. So he chases the knight back, Wesley So does, but then black starts trying to weaken the queen side, and once pieces have been traded, he brings his queen forward, where now he's combining an attack as well as furthering his activity and development and clearing up this bishop diagonal. So the queen is forced to go back, and he's finally developed this bishop. Now he's ready to castle. But instead, he starts an attack, putting pressure on this bishop, or this knight, and preventing white from castling, because now there's no way except the awkward movement of bringing this bishop here and then here to actually relieve the pin. So Wesley So actually decides to bring his king up and keep his king in the center. Of course, Mamedyarov wants to immediately open the center. And so we go about kind of an awkward phase of development. Mamedyarov actually decides not to castle, and because he decides that if he castles, then all of white's pieces might present some problems. He might start pushing the h-pawn. So he actually himself keeps his king in the center and decides to centralize his own pieces. So at this point, all the minor pieces are totally developed, and it looks like we're going to have the kings in the center, so we get a central struggle that focuses around the weakness of each king. Now, of course, it looks like we could possibly trap this bishop with g6, but it's actually a huge tactical mistake because white would just take, and then we're not just losing this bishop because of the tactics, we're actually losing a rook. So, of course, we don't get that line in the game. White decides to try to trade off the light square bishops. And black's strategy is to try to undermine the weak position of the king in the center, because now we actually have this semi-open file for black that he can use to penetrate. So this is quite amazing. It looks like Wesley So is deciding to bring his king further into the center because he deems it as safe enough. But now our own king is in the center and a little vulnerable, but there's not really too many pieces on the board left at this point to exploit it. White centralizes his queen, and we bring our rook into the game. So of course white doesn't want his king sitting on f3 with the queen still on the board, and black is protecting his own king, but now we have a more normal position. The only issue, though, is that black's king is still in the, white's king is still in the center, and it's still a little awkward. So black tries to have a trade, but now black is pushing his central pawns and gaining space in the center. White pushes b4 to try to open the queen side, but black doesn't allow that. And then now black is trying to contest the d file. And these pawns are starting to be a problem for white. So it looks like white is still going for his plan of opening the queen side, but it actually creates a lot of weaknesses. At this point, it's about equal, and black's king is safe enough, but black starts pushing his pawns anyway. And now here we see a terrible blunder by Wesley So. Now, he should have just taken with the pawn, and it would have been equal, and with the pieces on the board, it basically just becomes a contest in the center. But with pawn takes f3, he would have maintained equality. Instead, he makes a horrible blunder, queen takes f3, and now with e4, black's activity has reached a point where he's either going to mate the black king or force white to give up a huge amount of material. The only option for white at this point is to take the bishop and give up the queen, which is a terrible option because he actually is going to lose more than his queen, either his rook or he will be mated. But after e4, if the queen moves, for example, to queen to a3, then we get a checkmate. So at this point, after e4, Wesley So actually resigned, and thus ending his winning streak of many, many games over the past year and a half. If you have any questions or comments about this game, just let me know, and I'll see you in the future.